Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about a case that has taken place in Oklahoma concerning the opioid epidemic. Oklahoma State sued Johnson & Johnson for its role in the opioid epidemic in Oklahoma. So I'm going to discuss all the details and my opinion, so let's get into it. So if you're not familiar with Johnson & Johnson, they are a U.S. company that specializes in making lots of different products. One thing that Johnson & Johnson does is that they supply the opium that is used to make a variety of opiates by other companies. And so they were sued by Oklahoma for their role in the opioid epidemic that has taken over Oklahoma State. Oklahoma filed a public nuisance suit against Johnson & Johnson, which is unusual because it's not usually something that they would use that suit for, but I think that did help them to be able to win a substantial amount of money. They originally sued for $17 billion, but they were awarded $572 million. So where do they get that number? Because that's like an extreme number, 17 billion. They estimate that that is the cost of what it's going to cost the state to reverse all of the effects of the opioid epidemic for the next 20 years. So I assume that they were going to use that for treatments and clinics, inpatient, outpatient, recovery things like that, and maybe help offset the cost of their hospitals, what they take on when they have opioid problems. So maybe that's what they're going to use it for. They didn't really say in the article. The judge that was presiding over this case did award money to Oklahoma State. He says that the tactics used by Johnson & Johnson to sell their product was very misleading. They kind of downplayed the effects of it and how strong it is and how addictive it is and things like that, which I guess you could do that, but a lot of people are tied into an opioid epidemic situation. Like, it's not just the drug companies, it's not just the doctors, it's not the patients. Like, there's lots of things that play into why this is a problem. So even if the company downplays the effects of it, the doctor should have his own independent research. Like, that's what they go to medical school for. They have lots of things that keep them up to date on their license. Like, so I feel like you could say lots of things, but you'd have to look at your own independent research before you started prescribing. Maybe that's not how it works. I don't know. So I think this is a step in the right direction, but it's definitely a very long road to finding justice for the opioid problem and how to repair it. I'm not sure. The lawyers do plan to appeal this in court, so it'll probably be a very long time before it's officially sorted out and Oklahoma State actually sees any money. Some other things that I think are contributing to the epidemic involves the doctor-patient relationship and honestly even the nurse-patient relationship as far as an inpatient setting. I found in my own career that some patients are just extremely afraid of using opioids, even if it's like a tramadol, you know, nothing that's even strong, but they're so afraid because of what the media says about it. So they're afraid to even take it when they need it. But then I also have the complete opposite side of things where they don't need it, but they demand it, you know. Quick story, I had a patient who was getting fentanyl, which is, as many of you know, an extremely strong opiate. At the beginning of his stay, he did need it for the issues that were causing him pain, but then those issues resolved, but he was still needing it every 3 hours. And the floor is not usually a good place for fentanyl. It's just so strong. In my opinion, in my practice, what I've seen, fentanyl should be used for extreme acute pain, broken arms, things like that. And if you are at your end of life, if you are on your deathbed, that's when you should be getting fentanyl. That's my opinion, that's my experience. I know emergency room really likes to use fentanyl a lot. So it's probably a little different in that setting, but that's also an acute care setting. Whereas the floor that I work on, a regular med-surg floor, is not. So I don't really think fentanyl has a place on the floor except in those 2 cases, which I probably wouldn't have anybody that has a broken arm that's not been set on the floor, but I don't know. So the patient issues that were causing him pain had resolved, but he was still asking for it every 3 hours, and it took me 2 shifts to get it taken off. Like, I handed it off to day shift and I said, hey, he doesn't need this. I tried to get it taken off. It didn't work. You should try to also get it taken off or get it reduced or something, because he doesn't need this strong of medication. His issues have resolved. So day shift did not do that. And then I had to do it again the next night and had really finally the blood pressure was just a bit low, and I was able to use that to my advantage to say this is not appropriate medication anymore. A few shifts later, he found me because I was afloat, so I came from a different unit. A few shifts later, he found me and actually confronted me and said that he was not in pain anymore after his problem had resolved, and that he admitted to using it because he wanted to, because he liked the feeling, And the very first shift I had him, he told me how I should give it, and I was like, okay. I do know how to give medication, thanks. Okay. So that was my first indication that he was probably having an issue with it. But I was able to get that switched for him, and he did admit to it. So it's a very real problem, and honestly, it can be started in the hospital or as an outpatient. A lot of situations we see, they had an injury, got pain medications for it. Either they didn't know how to use them or used them wrong or didn't use them properly, whatever, and then they're now addicted to opiates. But it can also happen in a hospital where we're prescribing too strong of a medication for something that's not needing that strong of a medication, and then they have an issue. So lack of understanding, over-prescribing, under-prescribing. Under-prescribing is an issue as well, I think. If someone is having extreme pain, we're giving them too low of a dose, they're gonna, search for something else, search for other options. Because pain is real, it's not the 6th vital sign or whatever. I don't like that because it's not. Pain is subjective, whereas vital signs are objective. So it can't be a vital sign. But I digress. But it is real for people, and there's no way for me to feel what they're feeling, and there's no way for me to tell how bad it is. A lot of nurses and other health professionals, patients will sit there on the phone and, playing the game or whatever, and they're like, oh, I'm in a 10 out of 10 pain.
I'm like, oh, are you? This is the worst pain you've ever had in your life because you're sitting in the bed, calm, not moving, texting, laughing with your friends, but you're in 10 out of 10 pain.
And then there's the chronic pain versus acute pain. Chronic pain doesn't usually affect vital signs, like their blood pressure's not going to be high, their heart rate's not going to be high because they've adapted to living with it for so long. So maybe they are in extreme pain and they're just have adapted to it. It's really difficult for nurses to be able to judge pain. Short of a bone sticking out of your leg, I really don't know what your pain feels like, So it's really hard to judge pain, and then how do we prescribe for that? How do the doctors know what to give, because they don't know any more information than I do. The last thing that I think affects the opioid epidemic, in my opinion, is lack of alternatives or lack of knowledge of alternatives. I know that CBD and medical marijuana is still something that we're researching, but some research has proven that it does reduce pain, especially in cancer patients. But then there's another, set of issues that comes along with that medication. But also things like acupuncture, massage, and I understand a broken bone's not going to be fixed by acupuncture. There's things that do require opiates. But I think that when someone's in pain, that's just kind of what we go to initially. It's just opiates and then, go from there. But it really is heavily contributing to the issues that we're having. And before I became a nurse, I worked in internal medicine, and I worked there at the time when the opioid schedule changed. So then they could only prescribe like a week's worth at a time, and after that they had to see pain management. I understand why they said it that way, but do you think that people can get into pain management in a week? Like, do you really think that they're just...
Open arms, come on, like, we have so many open schedule for you, come on, we're ready for it. Like,
it takes months to get into a specialist, and even longer in other countries. So changing the schedule to, oh, you can only give a week and then you have to get into pain management. What do you want them to do for the next 3 months until their appointment? So when I would tell patients this new rule, they would absolutely freak, which I understand. But it's not my problem and it's not my fault. I'm just the messenger. But yes, please scream at me over the phone. I really love when you do that. So the opioid epidemic has really taken hold of lots of states, especially Ohio. Currently about 1,600 lawsuits are pending with the state to try to combat the epidemic. Hopefully this settlement in Oklahoma will help these lawsuits be able to be pushed through and settled as well. The deaths from 1999 to 2017 were 215,000. In 2017, about 50,000 were in that year alone. So nearly a quarter of the deaths were in 1 year. So obviously it's growing exponentially. So tell me what you think down below. I know this is a very touchy subject, so please be respectful. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I know this is a really tough topic, and I don't have any answers. I don't have all the answers, but hopefully the legislation that's coming through will help protect patients and protect, other people who are involved, and hopefully open up more centers for patients who can get treatment and then get back on their feet. Let me know what you think down below, and I will see you guys in the next one.